Interestingly, this study that came out from Lifeway showed that 80% of Protestant churchgoers said it is important to them that their pastors discuss current issues either every week or almost every week. So 62% said either every week or almost every week. 23% said at least once a month. So they said that that is how often their pastors address current issues. Now, I feel like I don't know if they defined current issues any further, but I just, from reading the rest of the analysis of this study, I'm guessing that a lot of people took that to mean politics, not necessarily candidates, but just hot button political issues, or at least cultural issues. So that's kind of the lens through which I'm reading this story. But is that a good thing?
Well, look, I think that's one of the confusions, right, is to say that these issues are political when they're talking about issues like, should schools be able to influence children to change their understanding of who they are without parents knowing? And should schools, teach about sexual morality? And should adults be able to, convince young people that they're somehow morally deformed because of a particular racial, identity or something like that? These are all political issues. They're hot button political issues. Abortion is a hot button political issue. Whether you allow immigrants into a country legally and make them abide by the law or not, like, these are hot button political issues that are all moral issues. They're fundamentally moral issues that have political application. And I think that's really where the confusion is that too many churches kind of buy into that. They don't speak to or address moral issues because they perceive them to be political. But politics has a moral dimension because all of life has a moral dimension. Politics has a moral dimension because politics has taken up too much air out of the room anyway. Politics shouldn't be making decisions. We shouldn't be voting on things that we're voting on. I mean, I just looked at my ballot. Good heavens. You know how big the Colorado ballot is this year? It's a phone book. It's ridiculous.
Wait, why? Because of all the initiatives?
Yes. And we're voting on things. Yeah, we're voting on things that are already decided in the Constitution, or that we want to change, or we want the government to speak into areas where it shouldn't speak into. So that's the challenge. And look, like it or not, it's the moment we're in. Here, and I know we just have a minute here. Let me just give you kind of the biggest punchline for me. When people don't hear churches talk about these things, one of the problems is everybody else is all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not just the fear of maybe saying the wrong thing or maybe misrepresenting biblical teaching. I get that fear, and people should teach with fear and trembling. We should be really careful before we go out on the limb and say, "Thus saith the Lord," on something that the Bible doesn't speak to. On the other hand, if everybody else is talking about it except for us, then the impression we give is, oh, well, I guess the Bible doesn't say anything about this. The Bible doesn't have a relevance to everyday life. The other thing that if we only talk about the Bible and the moral issues on a personal level, then we think that Christianity is a personal and privatized religion, and that there isn't instruction from God about how he created the world and the role and scope of the state and how we should respond to the powers that be and so on. And all that stuff's in there. And obviously the rich history of theology has unlocked an awful lot of what that looks like, not just individuals. And of course, look, every book of the Bible was written to a community, there was a few written to Timothy, Philemon, but the rest of those books were written to entire communities. They were to be read out loud. And they were like, here's how you live in this pagan, wicked city. Yeah, I think it leaves a lot out. And I hope this is a study that encourages pastors to do this. And look, I get it. It seems like you can't win. It seems like you're completely, So I'm empathetic with pastors.
Oh, John.
So. Yeah,
you're growing. Okay, my biggest punchline to this was, I could see people reading this and kind of balking, especially in my church, and most of the churches I've been in the last 20 years have been expositional. So we go through books of the Bible, and I could hear pastors saying like, no, we don't do the current event thing. We don't get caught up in X, Y, and Z. But just from my experience, if you're preaching through books of the Bible, all of these things are going to come up. Everything's going to come up because, again, most of these issues are questions of what it means to be human, what marriage is, what kind of world is this, What kind of world did God intend for it to be? And all of that comes up in the Bible, especially the Old Testament. If you're preaching through the Old Testament, you're going to talk about current events, and you're going to talk about stuff that's way more salacious and offensive to the eyes than even what you think is the craziest current cultural event.
At least if you get to the end of Judges, man, that's rough stuff.
Oh, I mean, those are the kind of sermons where the pastor's like, okay, if you have children like 12 and under, they really should not be in here for this. You know it's going to be a good sermon when it starts with that.